Next up, Greg. Are you ready? Yeah. Greg from Akash is getting ready. He's going to do a live demo as well, so let's pray to God it's going to go well.
One thing I love about Akash, it always works. I'll show you that. And it should work. There you go. Big round of applause for Erica and team to put this across. And I'm considered to be the difficult one because I wanted to do a live demo and they didn't really set it up. So thank you so much. My name is Greg. I love life, liberty, and the happiness in the pursuit. I'm the founder of Akash Network. And quick show of hands, how many of you here heard of Akash? Or, oh, wow, quite a lot. How many of you used Akash? All right, hopefully we'll change that after we leave this talk, but that's great. I mean, I don't need to talk anymore. You all know what Akash is. Job's done. Anyway, today's talk is about Akash, but really about why AI is in trouble and how crypto is actually saving AI. There's a gentleman here already asleep. So, background, I'm an open source developer. I've been developing, contributing to cloud native infrastructure for a very long time. This is me. I wrote a bunch of code that got very popular in the Kubernetes and Golang ecosystem. Me in my life, when I used to code a lot, I was trending at top 13 across the globe, across all languages, and top 4 in Golang, right, for the libraries I wrote. Some of this, it was the only human being here. In fact, I was trending more than Go in the Golang category. Some of the libraries that I've written, which for Akash, are now used by NVIDIA and IBM's, AWS, and Department of Defense, US Department of Defense, Docker, and GitLab, and Rancher, Apache, Bitcoin, whatnot, right? So in fact, the NVIDIA device drive for Kubernetes uses Akash's code. So if you deployed NVIDIA or AI in Kubernetes, you probably use my code. So pretty much every network that uses Kubernetes uses Akash's code. So Akash has been in the building for a very, very long time, and we learned quite a lot. And also I think we built something that we are very proud of. But before we get into Akash, there was an article written in Semaphore last year that talked about AI boom is great, but AI is in trouble, and how crypto is actually saving AI. And this Semaphore is a fairly mainstream publication. And considering this was written in 2023, when the sentiment across the board of crypto was fairly not great, let's put it that way. I mean, this is coming down from FTXs of the world, right? So the first article in the news that talked about crypto in a positive sentiment, and I think that is a moment that we had to celebrate. And the article goes something like this, right? So there was a student in Cornell trying to train a model. And they, usually you try to train a model, you go to Amazon to find GPUs. Guess what? There are no GPUs available. Or Amazon would ask him to, basically give a long contract. I mean, you got to get into a year-long contract to even get basic chips to train your AI. And I assume here we all know what the relation between GPUs and AI is. If not, AI uses GPUs. GPUs has accelerated chips that power AI. Without GPUs, AI can be run, but the advanced or the newer ones really can't run without GPUs. And GPUs are in a big short supply, right? They're very, very hard to get. I'll get into that in a second. And so this gentleman, could not get GPUs anywhere, but he could go find a weird network called Akash and actually get the A100s for like $1.12 or something. So this is the first time we're seeing in the real world where an AI researcher or any startup company that really is impossible for them to do any type of training or inference, unable to do so with the traditional infrastructure, but coming to this alternative infrastructure that's actually promising and actually solving the problem. So why that is? Why that is because GPUs are nearly impossible to lease on demand. So today, if you were to go to hyperscalers, right? Your hyperscalers, and everybody goes to hyperscalers, so basically they ran out of all the A100s and H100s that you can give. And if they do, they gatekeep them, right? So they don't give it to you just because you are paying on demand. You got to pay 1 year up front, and maybe if you're lucky, you'll get some, right? So it's extremely tightly controlled because the supply chain hasn't quite caught up to the demand of AI. Right? So demand is ever increasing, and the supply chain is not quite catching up because the supply chain is very complex. It is, I mean, most of the chips that are preferred by AI workloads are made by NVIDIA. Most of the chips from NVIDIA are made by, there's another company called TSMC, which is based in Taiwan. And it's not exactly great in terms of their production pipeline to get these chips out. And every time there's a new chip, NVIDIA makes a new chip every 18 months or so. It takes a long time for the fabs to reconfigure their tooling to produce new chips. So it's a very complex supply chain that's not quite catching up to the demand. That's why it's very, very hard to get chips. Now, today, if you forget hyperscalers, and you can go to the secondary, smaller chip companies, right? And CoreWeaves and Lambda Labs of the world, and same problem there, right? So Lambdas and CoreWeaves will not give you high-density chips without $1 million a minimum contract, right? So you got to prepay, then wait for 3 or 4 months, and by the time you get them, you already, you already probably moved on, or you have different needs. And if you want to purchase directly from NVIDIA, it takes significantly longer, right? So it takes about 2 years, I think, for H100s. That too, if NVIDIA thinks you're cool. I mean, there's that coolness factor too. So NVIDIA will not sell it to you unless they think you're doing something meaningful, right? They'll sell you in like small quantities, but anything large quantities is impossible to get. Even Elon Musk, for example, was complaining the other day that GPUs or H100s are harder to get than drugs, even though that's a low bar in San Francisco. But that's his like famous, saying that it's really impossible for the world's most wealthiest person to get the chip. So you can see what the Cornell student had to go through to get those A100s. And what that means is, well, what does that mean to the world, right? It is very initial costs are very, very high. It deters new entrants, so that means it's stifling innovation. And if you are an AI company trying to raise money, your VC is going to ask you where you're going to get your chips from. So if you don't have a decent answer, you're not going to get the money. So it's really very, very, very hard and very very restrictive, right? And now, when even if you get the money, even if you have $10, $20 million in your bank account, even if you go and do these deals with the providers, you're a startup company. Your needs change, right? And the model's evolving so rapidly that by the time you get the chips, your needs may have completely changed because there's a new GPT version that came out, or OpenAI or Anthropic released something, right? So you cannot have these like fixed setups, rigid setups as a startup company, and your biggest asset in an early stage company is time and iteration. If you cannot iterate, you will fail. So that's what's happening with a lot of AI companies today, right? They're failing left and right because they cannot iterate quickly. But there are free GPUs everywhere, and that's the thing people don't know. Where? Well, crypto miners. There are a ton of crypto miners with GPUs, right? There's a company called Foundry, for example. In fact, the story goes into how this person found Foundry, which is a DCG, or digital currency group company that owns Grayscale. They've been doing mining for a long time, and they've been sitting on A100s, a lot of them. And they're not a cloud company. They have no cloud practice. They do mining, right? So So there are companies like that with a lot of GPUs, and there are companies, machine learning companies themselves. When you have, OpenAIs of the world that was using A140s for training, which is older generation chips, and upgraded to H100s, which is the newer generation chips, what do you think happens to the A100s? Right, it has to go somewhere, right? So there is a lot of older models which are very, very good, by the way. Oops. Okay, sorry, something moved. Older models, which are really good, by the way, are now just sitting idle in warehouses, right? So there is like massive supply of chips. It's just there hasn't been a good way for these chips to come to market. And another big source of chips is when you do training, you're not training all the time, right? You train, you infer, and then you wait while before you start the next training run. But the needs for compute is very different from training to inference. So what happens during the down cycles when you're not training, that's another opportunity for chips. So all that is essentially coming and finding a way on Akash, and Akash is a radically new way to share compute. We wrote the white paper in 2018. We talked about GPUs in 2018, but people didn't pay attention. They think GPUs came in 2024, but these things have an interesting way they work. And the way it really works is providers, with excess compute, register to Akash and provide a compute to Akash. You as a tenant can define your application and specifically say how much you're willing to pay for a workload. You can say I want A100s, H100s. I'm willing to pay $2 an hour. Place it on chain. There's an order book that gets where your order goes on, and there's a reverse auction for the order book, and you ultimately get to choose the provider and then deploy on the provider directly, right? And the best part of it is on demand. It's the only network right now that can offer on-demand H100s at a reasonable price, right? So if you have, there are networks that could do on demand, but not general purpose compute. So Akash is the only general purpose platform. Some of the costs are incredible, right? You can see H100s, available for, like $1.34. I mean, it's a variable price. This is a mid price we're seeing, right? So you have A100s for 70 cents. It's all kinds of amazing things. If you can go to akash.network/GPUs, you'll see these prices in real time. And it's permissionless and peer-to-peer, right? It's fully open source. And so open source, in the sense the code is open source, but the process to create the code and process to create the roadmap itself is open source, right? It has steering committees. It has special interest groups that have different that sort of like are in charge of different parts of the chain. It's self-funded. There's a public goods fund that anyone can apply to. In fact, the Akash website and all the aspects is actually managed by the community, whereas the core team focuses on steering the community more than actually building the stuff. So we're about 500 contributors for Akash Network. There have been about 30 proposals to fund. The latest proposal that went online today is by a professor from University of Texas, Austin, for verifiable hardware. There are professors from MIT, RIT, we have University of Illinois, Champaign, Urbana, all of them with their own expertise that around cloud computing are making proposals. So Akash is being built really by the world, by these experts that you can't really hire as a company, right? But as a community, it's a completely different story. So we're able to attract extremely smart people to make proposals and actually improve the network, and all happens in a fully open source, open manner. It's actually a thing of a beauty. If you can scan the code, you can see all the activity that happens on Akash Network. Growing ecosystem, we have some of the amazing AI teams, News Research, which is responsible which trains the model called Hermes. I believe they're training the next Hermes on Akash right now, using H100s. You have University of Texas doing a whole lot of things. You have Brev. Brev is considered to be the Firebase of AI. In fact, Brev is not a crypto company, right? It's a traditional AI company. They make fine-tuning extremely simple. I mean, NVIDIA is a big user of them. In fact, NVIDIA was talking about Akash through Brev on their Twitter account. So by these integrations, we get quite a lot. I mean, we haven't included the new ones that came. Recently, we had Prime Intellect that did a integration with Akash and doing federated learning. So based on a new paper called Dialoco, which is by Google DeepMind, that really talks about how can you do heterogeneous training on distributed clusters, and and Prime Intellect implemented in a code version called Open Dialoco and running on Akash right now. So incredible teams and incredible integrations that are currently live. Highly recommend you check it out. So far, and this is real, right? So far, we served about 58 million, memory gigabyte hours released on Akash, and you can see the usage has been just crazy. This year, about 186,000 leaser applications deployed right on Akash, and you can see the activity correlated with this year being GPUs really active. And now let's do the best part of this whole talk. I love to do live demos because you want to see a real system working, right? I'm always confident because Akash never breaks. It never does. It's been around for 4 years. It is more alive than Amazon Web Services, and I take that. So I'm going to deploy a LLM live in front of you on an A100. So I click deploy here, and I say build my template. I can upload something called SDL. SDL is basically the definition of your application. I have this image here. I said Olama, which is a LLM router. I'm saying pull Mistral, right? And serve this thing, and I create deployment, and I'll explain to you as we go because it takes a little time to pull the model. Let's start the timer, 3:01. So I think it takes about 90 seconds to get a GPU on Akash. It's the fastest experience out there, way faster than any other centralized or decentralized, right? Now I placed the order. I'm waiting for bids. I got a bunch of bids here. Remember I was talking about Foundry? Foundry's here, giving me V100, but I want an A100. There's this Oblibus here. They're giving me an NVIDIA A100. I'll choose the A100 for $500 a month, which is amazing, right? I click accept bid, and I approve. And by the way, all this happens on the blockchain and all the good stuff. And if you want to do this and see what's happening, please feel free to do so. And you can actually show you the transaction. It takes a second. And it's deploying. Amazing. I did notice this proxy server here is a little restrictive, so I'm going to have to switch to my phone. It has one bar. So let's see. I'm deploying on my phone in a foreign country. Give me a second. There you go. They're waiting for the logs. I mean, it's almost done. It's downloading the model. It should be live by now. Great. So I'm going to copy this. Okay. Port number, I'm going to have a pre-make port. It's really hard to do with a single hand, but let me try this. And I'll keep it ready here. All right, so I'm not lying. This is the actual port I just showed you I deployed, right? Once this is 100%, okay, great. Are we ready? Boom. Come on. There you go. All right. I asked it, what is Akash Network? It said, Akash is decentralized cloud computing platform built on Cosmos SDK. Tell me another question to ask. It'll respond. Erica, pick a question. Who is Greg Osuri? Let's see what it says. What did Ilya see? I cannot specify. Oh, Jesus, that's possible. Well, I'm not famous. I just deployed an LLM live in front of you without permissions, without logins, without credit cards, on an A100, on a stage, on my mobile phone with a single bar. And thank you. Any questions I'll take?
Any questions?
That was 15 minutes, right? Yeah.
There's a mic if you want to. Oh, yeah, sure.
So I think you guys have a wonderful stats page, so really appreciate it because I know some other projects don't necessarily have that transparency. But my question, after having tracked the data and kind of like how the network's been progressing, is that demand, on an absolute basis is still quite low. So I was wondering what you thought would be like the mainstream demand unlock for this to really propagate,
Good question. So the demand right now is low in terms of our usage. Why? Because we have an incredibly huge challenge in attracting non-crypto users. That happens to be installing the wallet. We have a 0.5%, less than 0.5% conversion rate for activation. So that means out of 200 people that come and actually click deploy, one person installs the wallet. That is considered horrible in every way. Why? Because they had to back up the keys, and that's one part. And the second part is acquiring AKT. Well, you got to go to Coinbase, and plus you can't use your business credit cards because people like to use business credit cards to pay their cloud bills. It's a huge challenge to get your wallet installed and installing and getting AKT. But guess what? We solved it. We have a new update coming in a couple of months called trial wallets. What we're doing is every user that comes to Akash Network, at least the console you see, we're creating a trial wallet with some AKT preloaded that can be only used to deploy and nothing else. So we have few capabilities that we introduced to the blockchain over the last few updates. One is called AuthZ, another one is called gas. Sorry, I slept 2 hours last night on the airplane. What was that? Fee grant module, where you can delegate fees from a different wallet. Using these two, combination of these two, we can create wallets. We can effectively remove those two friction points. Our goal is to convert a Google ad user. We cannot do that right now because the conversion is so bad. And that's a challenge across crypto. And we believe this works. You can export this to the rest of the ecosystem. But yeah, we are very transparent about the challenge. We acknowledge this challenge, and it's very hard. It's probably better than most every other crypto network, but compared to your traditional AWS, it's like minuscule, right? And we totally agree, but that's going to change. And I'm very excited. I think this trial wallets are going to be a bigger unlock than GPUs for Akash.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Greg, for your demo, and also.
Thank you so much.